In today's video, I'll talk about my top 5 questions I'd prepare if I'd have an interview with Oracle, and I'm speaking about the non-technical questions here. The number one most commonly asked question in pretty much any job interview these days is your elevator pitch. Tell me about yourself. Of course, there's plenty of ways you can go about this, but an interesting one that you might want to consider is to think about your passion. Okay, what's that one thing that you are really interested in? Could be that you're very interested in working with petabytes of data, for instance, or I don't know, maybe if you're applying for a more executive role, would be maybe in managing teams of people or high-performing teams if you want. But you should really think about what's that one thing that sets you apart from other candidates, and then start it from there. So this is, I would say, an interesting way to develop. And by the way, just a quick tip here. There's quite a few candidates who invest the time to prepare their elevator pitch, and who prefer to have even 2 versions or even more versions if you want, depending on who you're interviewing with. Okay, and also if you want, you should also prepare a longer and a shorter version. Okay, this would be the variations that you'd like to consider here. Right, the second question that I believe you should seriously prepare when preparing an interview with Oracle, and again I'm speaking about non-technical questions here, would be why Oracle, why this company, why this role? Okay, what's your motivation for this job that you're applying for? And a mistake here that you want to avoid at all costs is to simply take some keywords from their culture, okay, and basically say that you're very excited about their culture, their keywords from that document, and maybe also say that it's a very profitable company, and that's it. A better way for you to start thinking of the best possible answer of why Oracle, why this job, would be to find some motivators for you specifically for going for this role. Now, of course, I do understand that for some of you it might be that, hey, it's a unique opportunity to advance your career actually, or it's because of the money, but there must be something else, especially if you're applying for a well-paying job with a high-performing company. There must be more than that, more than the money. And believe me when I tell you that companies, especially large corporations, are very careful of hiring people that do somewhat resonate with the way they think. Okay, not necessarily people who use keywords from their culture. Okay, so this is, I believe, a very weak approach if you want. But even if you want, you can find a reason such as, I have friends who work there, and I've seen their progression, and I've worked. You might have even collaborated with those friends at some point in time, and you're basically excited about the opportunity. Okay, because of the team there. Another motivator for you to join this company could be some specific, working with petabytes of data. Okay, the scale of the company. Okay, and truth be said, Oracle as a company performed quite well recently, and this could also be a very interesting one. But the main thing here while preparing your answer for why Oracle is to find the best motivators for you, and then start it from there. Okay, by the way, you can also expect this question with multiple interviewers if you want. Right, the third question that I would prepare if I'd go for an interview with Oracle, of course, again for the behavioral part, would be, what's your most challenging project or initiative, or tell me about the challenge you've had. And I believe an answer to this question actually very much depends on the type of role you're applying for. Okay, so these answers would very much differ by the level of your role here and by the type of the job that you're performing. A challenge for a salesperson is not the same as a challenge for a PM, okay, for a technical PM if you want. So it's really challenging for me to give you too many pointers when it comes to how to answer this. But if I tell you something from my experience, is your best story, that one thing that you really want them to know about you, will contain a challenge. Okay, and so long your best story and that challenge also is relevant to the job description that you're going for, I believe that could also qualify as the best challenge that you would like to use in your actual interview. Okay, so this is again the challenge. It can be read as, if I ask you what's a challenge that you've had recently, you can interpret this question as what's your best story. Okay, so pro tip here, whenever you're getting asked a question, try to read between the lines. Try to read whether you have a better way to frame that question. Try to see why they ask you this question. If I ask you about the challenge, it means I'd very much like to start a conversation with you. So why not start the conversation with me with your best story? Okay, right, next. Number 4 here. Question, actually type of question that I prepare for a job interview with Oracle would be interpersonal. A time when you received critical feedback from your manager, or a time you didn't get along with someone. How did you react? Okay, and this I believe makes sense for pretty much any role you're going for, simply because interpersonal skills are, an essential thing for people, for pretty much any company to screen in job interviews. What is that one thing that me as an interviewer this time I'd be really interested in while screening you for interpersonal skills? That would be the keyword trust. Are you someone able to build trust with other people? Again, to give you those questions, tell me about time when you received negative feedback from a manager. Were you able to build trust with your manager? And of course, it's a beginner mistake if you go with the time when you did not actually have a conflict with your manager, but you put it as it was a conflict. Okay, so it must be something for real. If you don't have a conflict, then most likely you have no experience with the professional career. But even if you're a recent graduate, I mean, it's impossible for you not to have had a conflict. Number 5 here, just quickly, a failure you've had. Okay, so tell me about the time when you failed. And from experience, from doing this for some time, I know these questions can be quite challenging to answer at times, but so first and foremost, you must brainstorm for a time when you had a failure, and from experience, again, it will take you at least 3 attempts for you to find that one failure you really want to talk about during your job interview. Another pointer that you want to take seriously, and this goes beyond the failure stories, is you'd want to structure your answers in the STAR format. Okay, so you want to explain the situation. Okay, then you want to go with the task or with the challenge of that story. Then you would want to focus on the action part. Okay, and then you'd want to talk about your results. Okay, so this STAR. Now, if we had to apply this format for the failure stories, okay, so the situation and the task would be pretty obvious, but then on the action side of things, you would, and on the results, you would want to go towards your learnings from it. So in other words, I very much turn my results into learnings. Okay, so the actual failure happens in the action part, and then you would talk about the learnings. And this star format is actually pretty important also for the previous types of questions, especially for the challenge questions and for the interpersonal skills one, because as interviewers prefer to hear answers in a structured format. Okay, so they hear this pretty much every day. That is answering non-technical questions in the star format. It's pretty common if you want to Google it. And people actually prefer familiar approaches. So this is why, if I were you, I would also take this format and I would structure my answers to behavioral questions primarily. So I can be more relatable and why not more likable to a certain extent in these job interviews. So this will be my top 5 picks if I'd have to prepare a job interview with Oracle. Hopefully you found this information useful, and thank you very much for watching.